Good morning. Thank you for joining our second CFR training webinar session for the 2020 calendar year consolidated fiscal report. We had a good session yesterday, and that recording will be posted shortly along with today's session on YouTube. We will send out an email to all providers notifying them of when they're available and where they can be found. Today we have approximately 850 attendees spread throughout all the different agencies that require CFR. So we have an even bigger crowd than yesterday, and hopefully everyone is able to connect. As I mentioned yesterday, we do have good news. SED will be present at these trainings, so we will include information regarding SED programs. My name is Ken Glenmeyer. I work for OPWDD, and I'm the host for today's webinar. Today's panelists will be as follows. Representing OASAS is Paul Green and Paul Sutton. Representing OMH is James Shelker, Michelle Chalinsky, and Kathy Katz. Representing OPWDD is Francis Vasilio, Alpa Amin, and myself. Representing SED is Jahida Benatar and Nally Gutos. And then representing DOH is Jeffrey Nickerson. We also have a survey that will pop up at the end of the event, and we greatly appreciate you guys taking the time to fill out the survey so we can continue to make these trainings better for you guys. We are accepting questions and answers, and we strongly encourage all attendees to ask the questions through the Q&A function on WebEx. It's on your right-hand side, and some people have been using it already. What we're going to try to do is answer all those questions, not necessarily today, but we're going to try to gather them all and then present them online, probably on the OMH website. Here's some contact information for all the different agencies. In general, the New York State agencies prefer email contact, especially now that a lot of us are working from home. We can answer the emails quicker and more efficiently. We do check our voicemails at the office, but email is generally preferred. And same for the claims contact information. Email is preferred, but the numbers are also available as well. Some goals that we're going to have today and we want to meet are we want to introduce providers to the New York State CFRS software. We want to help providers become familiar with the claiming and supplemental schedules. We want to discuss important policies, principles, and rules regarding completion of the CFR. We want to identify any major changes that have occurred since the 2019 calendar year's CFR. We want to provide guidance regarding the completion of the COVID-19 and COVID-19S schedules, which are new for you guys this year. And then we also want to provide New York State agency contact information for specific questions not covered during this training. And I'm going to pass this off to the next presenter.
Thanks, Ken. Good morning. My name is Jimmy Shelker, and I'm from the Office of Mental Health. And in this section of the training, I'm going to cover the CFR highlights, the supplementals, and general changes. Lastly, I'm going to go over the OMH, DOH, and OCFS specific changes. Any changes from the 2019 calendar CFR manual will be detailed in the 2020 calendar CFR transmittal letter. The CFR transmittal letter is available at the below web address. It is important to review the changes listed in the transmittal letter when completing the CFR. changes in funding source codes or program codes may require immediate corrections when carrying data forward from a prior version of the CFR software to the current version of the CFR software. Okay. Executive Order 38 went live July 1st, 2014. Providers are directed to visit the EO 38 website for more information about that. The following are some important internal controls to help prevent and detect fraud. I'll go over a few of these here. Number one, having a system of checks and balances to ensure no one person has control over all parts of a financial transaction. Number three, restricting the use of agency credit cards and verify all charges made to credit cards or accounts to ensure they were business related. Four, provide Board of Directors oversight of agency operations and management. And five, prepare all fiscal policies and procedures in writing and obtain Board of Directors approval. These policies and procedures should be familiar to all staff so they are aware of them. And let's skip to number 9, protecting cash and check collections. More information on internal controls can be found on the OMH website at the link provided below. Okay. To assist you in the preparation of the CFR, we will be posting a recording of this presentation and a written response to the questions asked during the sessions. Notification will be sent to all attendees once the postings have been made. The CFRS software help menu offers guidance on importing, formatting a text file, which is a time-saving method of populating the CFR directly from spreadsheets. Using a system of specially formatted text file, you can import CFR1 expenses and revenues and other data. For more information, see importing a text file. Okay. Here we'll cover the general changes to the CFR manual. Beginning with Section 2, the matrices were updated to include the new COVID-19 and COVID-19S schedules for full abbreviated, mini abbreviated, and Article 28 CFRs. SED submission requirements were revised for service providers submitting full and abbreviated CFRs. In Section 7, reporting guidance was added for Special Act school districts. Also, guidance was added for the COVID-19 and COVID-19S schedules, as well as guidance was added for the Supplementary 1 schedule. Okay. In Section 8, which are the general instructions of the CFR manual, they were revised as follows. The FAQ relating to reporting consolidated children's HCBS waiver services were updated. An FAQ was added to provide guidance on whether an agency is required to file if they operated a program for only a portion of a reporting period due to situations such as a late start to the program, discontinuation of the program or agency, or a merger into another agency. Also, the FAQ relating for reporting to from transportation expenses for OPWDD programs was updated. In Section 10, which is CFR-I of the manual, and the CFRS software were updated. The contact information for an agency's president, chair of the board of directors is required on a CFR-I for all not-for-profit corporations. Not-for-profit corporations will not be able to validate their CFR without completing the president, chair of the board of directors information. Section 12, which is the CFR-III of the manual and the CFRS software, were updated to include fields for the first and last name of the service provider's chief executive officer or LGU's chief fiscal officer. In addition, a field to include the first and last name of the LGU's director of community mental health services has been added. Section 13 of the CFR manual and Schedule CFR-1 were updated as follows. Line 40, which is other OTPS, other than personal service, a predefined entry titled Bad Debt was added. Line 79, federal grants, a predefined entry related to COVID-19 was added. And for line 97, the provision for bad debts revenue deduction, line instructions for that was updated. In Section 15, Agency Administration and Schedule CFR-3 were updated for line 17, Other. A predefined entry titled Bad Debt was added. And in Section 20, and Schedule DMH-1 were updated for line 25, Federal Grants. A predefined entry related to COVID-19 was added. Section 22 of the CFR manual and Schedule DMH-2 were updated for line 24, Federal Grants. A predefined entries related to COVID-19 were added. Sections 33B and 33C were added to the CFR manual effective July 1st, 2019. Section 33B is the COVID-19 information schedule and should be used by providers to report increases in program administration and program site expenses and revenues in the reporting period on a program site-specific basis that are specifically related to COVID-19. Section 33C, which is the COVID-19 informational schedule, should be used by providers to report SCD-only program net changes in program administration and program site expenses and revenues in the reporting period on a program site-specific basis that are specifically related to COVID-19. Section 43, which is Appendix J of the CFR manual, has been updated to include guidance for COVID-19 special considerations. Section 53, which is Appendix T of the CFR manual, was updated to include COVID-19 informational schedule under the instructions for completing abbreviated, mini-abbreviated, and Article 28 CFRs. Okay. Sections 10, 11, 12 of the CFR manual were updated to provide for the acceptance of e-signatures on the certification schedules, which is CFR-I, II, III, and the IV. They must be uploaded through the CFR upload page, and the checkbox attestation must be selected. An electronic signature is defined as an electronic sound, symbol or process attached to or logically associated with an electronic record and executed or adopted by a person with the intent to sign the record. Okay. Signatures can be handwritten or electronic. However, the attestation must be completed prior to its use and is provided to you during the upload stage of your certification pages. Here's how the signature attestation reads. So please review that at your convenience, okay? In this section, we're going to cover the OMH supplemental schedules. And there are 4 supplemental schedules specific to OMH. OMH 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we'll discuss each one in the coming slides. Schedule OMH 1 captures units of service by program site. Here you would report the total units of service of the OMH program. Appendix F details the units of service for each OMH program. The total units of service on Schedule OMH1 transfers to Schedule CFR1, line 13, and Schedule DMH1, line 3. Total units of service on OMH1 must match the aggregate total units of service on the DMH3 for the same program. Units of service are very important to us. They are used to determine cost per unit of service for financial planning. The OMH1 units of service by program is only completed for OMH programs that file a full CFR. So here you would select the program on the left side of your screen and site on the right side from those drop-down boxes. Then you would scroll down to your program and you would enter data into those fields and click Save, okay? Next schedule is OMH2, and this captures Medicaid units of service by program site. OMH2 is completed for program sites that accrued Medicaid fee-for-service or Medicaid managed care revenue for services provided. Units of service are reported separately for Medicaid managed care and Medicaid fee-for-service. The total program units of service reported will transfer from OMH2 to Schedule CFR1, line 13A and 13B, respectively. The Medicaid units of service on the OMH2 should not be more than the Medicaid units of service reported on the OMH1. The OMH2 Medicaid units of service by program site is only completed for OMH programs that file a full CFR and receives Medicaid revenue for services provided. This schedule is set up the same way as OMH1, except it has been updated to track units of service separately for the Medicaid fee-for-service revenues and Medicaid revenues received as part of Medicaid managed care. Each line has an A and a B for this purpose. This is the second half of the OMH2 schedule, okay? Next is Schedule OMH3, and this captures client information. Here you would enter the number of clients served by the program, and this may differ from the number of admissions because a person can be admitted more than once. Caseload at the start of the current period should equal the caseload at the end of the prior period. The The OMH3 captures the number of persons served by the program and site for the year. Above on this screen is a program without an ongoing caseload. The beginning and ending numbers on lines 1 and 4 will be 0. So you'd indicate the number of persons served on lines 2 and 3. These numbers will indicate how many people were seen and how many left. Okay, above is a program with an ongoing caseload. You'd indicate the number of persons on the active caseload as of the beginning of the period on line number 1. Then you'd indicate the number of persons admitted to the program site during the reporting period on line number 2. Then you'd indicate the number of persons terminated from the active program enrollment during the reporting period on line 3. And you determine the number of active caseload as of the end of the reporting period on line number 4 by adding lines 1 and 2 and subtracting line number 3, okay? Schedule OMH4, and this captures units of service by payer by program site. And it's captured for the clinic treatment programs, which is program code 2100. This schedule captures units of service and revenue source by payer. Units of service data is used in the safety net payment calculation. Total units of service on schedule OMH4 line 15 should be similar or equal to OMH1 line 16. Okay. Here you would select the program and site, as you can see on your screen on the top left and right field boxes, and then fill in the applicable data below and click Save. This schedule must be completed based on date of service rendered and only if a service is provided during the reporting period. For the purposes of this schedule, a visit is defined as including all procedures provided to a patient on the same day and is referred to as a threshold visit. Okay. Next, we'll cover specific OMH changes. Beginning with Section 8, OMH revised their FAQ on allowable food and beverage expenses. The following was added: the cost of food, meal supplies, and non-alcoholic beverages is allowable for employees involved in emergency response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And restrictions apply, and you can visit the policy guide on the web link below. Okay? In Section 39, the following codes were added: 5010, which is the on-track New York Coordinated Specialty Care First Episode Psychosis Program, 5020, 5030, and 0680. Okay. Also in Section 39, the following codes were deleted, and this is from 2240 HCBS programs through the 2400. Okay. Also deleted program code 0820 and 6050, which is supported housing rental assistance. And the following codes were revised: 0910, 2680, and 6060 supported housing. OMH providers should continue to use the Mental Health Provider Data Exchange, MHPD, to submit corrections, openings, and closures of programs. The programs and sites reported on your CFR should match our CounSurge database. To this end, an attachment A is automatically generated and mailed with each desk review letter that we perform. It compares the programs listed in our concert database versus what you reported on your CFR. Any discrepancies should be resolved, okay? In the next section, I'll cover the DOH highlights, supplementals, and changes. DOH providers are required to complete a full CFR submission, including the following schedules, which is CFR 1 through CFR 6, okay? The reconciliation, the certification schedules, and the COVID-19 informational schedule. The programs listed in Appendix HH must report these services on the CFR. For program site identification number, use the first 4 digits of your agency code followed by the first 3 digits of your program code. Appendix HH provides the units of service measurement for each DOH program. On the CFR, the Integrated Outpatient Services Clinic, the IOS clinic, is reported under program code 2100 for OMH, 3520 for OASAS, and program code 1584 DOH. An allocation between OMH, OASAS, and DOH must be made if the provider operated both OMH and OASAS clinics prior to being designated as an IOS clinic. Programs are required to maintain support demonstrating they have used a reasonable method of allocating costs. You can refer to Section 66, which is Appendix GG, for further instructions. Okay. Next, we'll cover OCFS highlights, supplementals, and changes. OCFS providers may submit questions regarding their CFR submission to the OMH CFR unit. OCFS providers are required to complete a full CFR submission, including the following schedules: CFR 1 through CFR 6, the reconciliation, the certification schedules, and the COVID-19 informational schedule. The programs listed in Appendix II must report these services on the CFR. Okay. In Section 51, Position Title Code 327 was added to Appendix R. For program site identification number, you'd use the first 4 digits of your agency code and the first 3 digits of your program code. Appendix II provides the unit of service measurement for each OCFS program. This concludes this section of the presentation. I will now hand it off to Mr. Paul Sutton. Give me one moment here. Okay.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Jimmy. This is Paul Sutton with OASAS, and I'm going to go over some of our latest highlights and changes. First of all, effective immediately, OASAS has announced a name change to the Office of Addiction Services and Supports. The acronym OASAS will remain the same. This new name will coincide with the launch of OASAS's redesigned website, offering an improved user experience and easier access to addiction information. Penalties for late submission. Late submission of CFRs that are submitted after the due date may be subject to penalties. OASAS consolidated fiscal reporting requirements will be imposed in accordance with the policies and procedures described below. For funded providers, these are located at the Administrative and Fiscal Guidelines for OASAS funded providers revised in July 2019. And for non-funded providers, they will be found in Local Service Bulletin 2014-21. And various sanctions for late filing may include imposition of fines, withholding of advanced payments, and ultimately termination of state aid, suspension, limitation, or revocation of the operating certificate, and notification of noncompliance to the DOH in the case of Medicaid providers. Here's contact information for various departments for budgeting. If you have budget questions, reach out to this email. Any claiming or funding questions, reach out to the claims department. And as stated previously, email communication is preferred. A CFR submission is not complete without the submission of the required certification schedules and audited or reviewed financial statements. The preferred method of signature page financial statement submission is the electronic filing through the CFRS upload page located at the following address. Providers must keep original signature certification schedules and attestation statements corresponding to those emailed for the required retention period and must be able to make these documents available upon request to OASAS and any other stakeholder or governmental controlling party. However, OASAS will continue to accept emailed PDF files of the CFR-I, II, III, IV, attestation, financial statements, and parent agency admin allocation. And if these are emailed, they should be named using the proper naming convention as listed below. In order for your certifications to satisfy the submission requirements, the following issues should be avoided: partial images, illegible images, or blurred images. Finally, a new CFR-I, CFR-III, and CFR-IV need to be submitted for each new DCN number uploaded. Note that subsequent to the CFR-II being received, OASAS will accept an attestation reporting minor changes in lieu of additional CFR-IIs. OASAS providers are responsible for updating their own contact information into the provider directory system. At time of staff changes, contact names, email addresses, and phone numbers should be updated, and this will ensure providers and programs receive important information from the OASAS Communications Office, as well as providing current contact names and phone numbers to prospective clients. Below is the location of where this contact information can be uploaded or can be updated. The Frequently Asked Questions section of Section 8 now includes guidance stating that vital access provider revenue is a Medicaid fee-for-service payment and accordingly should be reported on the CFR-1, line 72A, DMH-1, line 18A, and DMH-2, line 17A. Section 13 of CFR-1, line 22, repairs and maintenance was updated to include that the costs related to minor repairs of the program site or physical plant and/or costs that maintain or restore an asset to its normal or expected useful life. Also include costs for contracted services such as housekeeping, garbage removal, and snow removal. Please note that repairs and maintenance costs incurred that extend the useful life of an asset or substantially increase its productivity should not be reported on this line. These costs must be capitalized and depreciated. In Section 38, Appendix E of the CFR manual, the following codes have been deleted. Code 2240 through 2400 relating to child and youth HCBS consolidated waivers. And the following program codes and/or descriptions have been modified in Appendix E. Code 465, Job Placement Initiative. Code 850, Family Support Navigator. 950, Peer Engagement. Of special note would be programs 2780 and 2790. Compulsive gambling is now problem gambling, and 2780 is problem gambling treatment, and 2790 is problem gambling prevention. And here's some more codes that have been updated in the last recent manual changes. 3100, Prevention Resource Centers, through 3550, Substance Use Disorder, Inpatient Rehabilitation Services. And here's one last group of codes that have been updated. 3551, Residential Rehabilitation Services for Youth, up through 4072, Vocational Rehabilitation. Please see the latest version of the manual for the full updated descriptions of these programs. Section 59, Appendix Z, in contract versus out of contract was revised as follows. OASAS requires that service providers report all programs operational during the fiscal reporting period on all OASAS core schedules, the CFR1 through the DMH1. This requirement applies to any and all combinations of the following: funded certified programs, funded non-certified programs, and unfunded certified programs. In addition, a provider that receives state aid funding for any OASAS program must report all programs operating on the claiming schedules. However, if the provider does not operate any programs that receive state aid funding, then none of the programs need to be reported on the claiming schedules. OASAS reserves the right to apply some or all of any surplus generated by a provider's funded and or unfunded programs against the deficit of one or more of that provider's funded programs, thereby reducing total provider state aid approved for the fiscal reporting period. In order to ensure accuracy, the Fiscal Audit and Review Unit, FARU, will perform on-site visits, and the CFR Review Unit will perform desk reviews of the CFR submissions. Any areas that need additional explanation or revision will be detailed in a CFR review and emailed to the provider. Failure to respond to the review may lead to withholding of funding or revocation of certification. Accurate and complete CFR data for OASAS programs is critically important for OASAS fiscal policy development and analysis. Cost report data is also requested and used by other New York State agencies, DOH, DOB, etc., and the federal government, CMS, HHS, for a variety of different purposes. The following are some examples of items covered in the reviews. Are signature pages, financial statements, etc. completed and submitted? Are all active programs reported? If applicable, have the units of service been reported on the CFR 1, line 13, as per Appendix E, and do they reflect the MSDS? Does the CFR 2, column 1, line 7, 9, and 10 match the financials? If not, has the reconciliation been completed? Is the CFR 2A completed? Is the CFR 3 completed? If applicable, is line 38, parent agency allocation, completed and submitted? Are the non-allowable expenses reported on CFR 1, line 40, or CFR 3, line 17, adjusted out accordingly? Are the hourly equivalents on the CFR 4 within reason? And these hourly equivalents can be arrived at by dividing the total amount paid by the total hours paid. Has the CFR 5 been completed, if applicable? Is the CFR 6 completed? If so, is there any amount in column 9, which must be adjusted out of the CFR 3, line 41. Here now is Paul Green to discuss some claiming highlights and changes with OASAS.
Hi, this is Paul Green from the New York State Office of Addictive Services and Support. Okay, so we've talked about the core reports and doing a thorough job on completing the CFR 1 through the DMH 1. It's important to get this done. That's all going to be used for fiscal analysis. Now, once you feel that you're done with that and you've done a good job of it, everything looks matches your records, now it's time to transfer the data to the claim and start the claim report. The claim is totally separate from the core reports, but it shares a lot of similarities. So in this case, you're going to use the transfer button on the bottom of the DMH2 in order to begin the claim. After transferring the data, you can make manual adjustments to the DMH2 if required. Okay? We would not expect adjustments to be made in the reporting of personal services, fringe benefits, and OTPS expense categories unless there is also a change in method of accounting. Okay? So if you're reporting accrual-based accounting for both the core and the claim, then I would not expect the personal services, fringe benefits, and OTPS to change. However, there would be changes such as vacation leave accruals. OASAS does not reimburse for vacation leave accruals. Therefore, if they're on the core and you transfer them over, the software will automatically stop them from transferring to the claim. So that's going to be a change. Also, for equipment and property, there's going to be a change between the core and the claim. On the core, you depreciated an item because it was over $5,000 and it had a useful life of over 2 years. So you had to depreciate it. But on the claim, you're going to expense it fully in the year that you purchase it because you want to get reimbursed fully for that year. Okay? So what we've done is we have updated the software to make it easier to make these adjusting entries. Okay? So here is the line DMH2 line 9, the equipment. When you transfer the number over, it comes from the DMH1 line 10. It is the amount that of equipment. Then you can click into additions, and there you can add an expensed item, such as a $30,000 piece of equipment. Okay. Then you can go into the line below it, subtractions, and there are some predefined lines there, and you can adjust out depreciation of other equipment, okay, or interest or such. Now, if there's something else that you need to adjust out, you can go down to the bottom and add a line. So then the net result will flow to the DMH2 line 9, okay? So a year or two ago, we had you taking everything out on line 12, and that was a little confusing because it wasn't category specific. So now we've updated equipment, line 9, and property, line 10, so you can take it out of the specific category. This is the same drop-down box for property on line 10. And some similar predefined entries for depreciation of a building, mortgage, capital improvement interest, mortgage expenses, real estate taxes, and such. Now, if you feel that there's something that is a legitimate expense, it does not have to be adjusted out, such as real estate taxes. Real estate taxes are allowable if they are included in as a section in your lease. So if you have questions with that, you can feel free to contact us, okay? if depreciation is not going to be allowable in your program, then it's also not going to be allowable in your administration. Okay. However, the program, you would adjust out the full amount, whereas the administration, you would only adjust out OASAS's portion. So this spreadsheet shows you a little bit how to do this. You would go to your CFR3 and you would write down the expenses that are considered non-reimbursable, okay? And you would add them up to about $39,000. You'd carry that number over to column 1, and then column A. Then column B would be the programs. Column C is the total operating expenses for that particular program, and you would multiply that into the total agency operating expenses to determine the formula, apply it, and then in the yellow is the amount to be adjusted out for that specific program. This would be adjusted out on a DMH2 line 12. Okay, so program expenses would come out on line 9 and 10, but administrative expenses would come out on line 12. Now, I've had a few people that don't want to go through this trouble, so they just try and take out the expense on the CFR3. That's not the way to do it, because first of all, this only adds up to $10,000. So here I'm only asking you to adjust out $10,000 versus if you do it on the CFR3, if you do it on the core, you're adjusting out almost $40,000. So you're hurting yourself. But second of all, then our fiscal reporting is not going to be accurate because we are not looking at the correct numbers. So again, take care of the core first, adjust out all the non-allowables, transfer the number over to the claim, and then adjust out the non-reimbursables. This is a screenshot of adjusting out the admin prorated adjustment percentage. You would adjust it out on the DMH2 line 12. Okay. Also, early retirement incentives and severance pay would come out on DMH2 line 12. Finally, if an expense is considered non-reimbursable for a provider, it would also be considered non-reimbursable for a related party. Therefore, if you're paying $68,000 in rent expense to a related party, okay, any portion of that is the related party's depreciation or mortgage interest or such would be considered non-reimbursable for OASAS's claiming. So in the example we did yesterday, you lease space $68,000, and we determined that all but $1,000 of it was allowable. So you had to adjust out $1,000 as non-allowable. Okay. However, the $67,000 that was allowable, most of that was depreciation and mortgage interest. So in this case, you would be adjusting out the claim for the depreciation and the mortgage interest as non-reimbursable. Okay. If you need assistance with this, feel free to call us. We're more than more than happy to help you. And our number was listed earlier. Okay. Finally, at the end of the CFR review, you're going to get this paragraph saying, if you agree with these findings, please revise it and upload it. Don't upload it. Just send me a PDF to look it over before you upload it. Or the alternative, if you don't agree with this, please submit your supporting detail as to why it does not need to be corrected. Okay. So that's it for OASAS, and now I will turn it over to Francis. Francis, yes.
Whoa. Hello, my name is Francis Vasalio, and I can't unmute for some reason, I don't think.
We can hear you, Francis.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're good.
This is Vasalio. I work in the OPWDD CFR unit. I'm going to touch base on some of the highlights for our programs and our supplemental schedules and the changes since last year. The first thing I want to touch on is that for a couple of our programs, when you report units of service, it's a little different from the others. For the supervised IRAs, the program 0231, as well as reporting the units of service you actually provide, you should also be reporting the therapeutic leave days and the retainer days that you're eligible to bill for, and include those along with the units of service you actually did provide. For two of our respite programs, 0311 and 0312, there's a combination when you bill Medicaid of quarter-hour units of service as well as per diem billing of units of service. If you have any per diem billing, you should convert that to 96 units of service each when you report your total on the CFR. Most of our programs are reported one column for the entire program, no matter how many sites you offer the program in. But we have 5 programs where you're required to report on a site-specific basis. Whenever possible, you should be direct charging your expenses for those sites, but we understand that that's not always feasible. In that case where you have to allocate some of your expenses across multiple sites, Appendix FF of the manual will give you some recommended methodologies for allocating those expenses. We have penalties. Our penalties at OPWDD are probably the most significant of all the state agencies. In order to avoid penalty, we have to receive in our Albany CFR unit by the deadline your CFR, your signed certification pages, and your financial statement. If we've not received all of those by the deadline, then you're subject to a 2% withholding of all your Medicaid payments for at least a month. So if you miss the deadline but for 2 days, the whole rest of that month, you could be subject to this penalty. And it's not refundable. So please make an effort to have a system in place at your agency that you can get everything in time. You need a final approved financial statement, not a draft. So you have to have time for the CPAs to get that back to you so that your board can approve it. And make sure that you've given your CPAs time to review your CFR, because if you don't update it till a day or two before it's the deadline, that's not much time for them to get a certification back to you if that's required. The federal government has told our state agency that they no longer wish to fund any agencies who don't meet the filing deadline. And since half of the money from our Medicaid programs comes from them, we're going to be cutting your rate by 50%. And that's not an idle threat. We've done it. If your calendar 2020 CFR, we haven't received everything by August 1st, it takes time to put it in place, but by the following February 1st, we will be cutting your rate by 50%. We have 3 supplemental schedules for OPWDD. The first 2 only apply to provider agencies who have ICFs. The OPWDD 1 asks you to provide certain information about your ICF, And if you are providing medical supplies, then you get to fill out the OPWDD 2, which asks for more detailed information about the medical supplies that you're providing. Our third supplemental schedule is the OPWDD 5, and it only applies to the programs listed on the screen. If you have any of these programs, you're required to report, and by site, in the cases where you have to report the program by site, an OPWDD capital schedule. The purpose of this is the federal government wanted to make sure that if you're receiving any extra funding for property expenses, that those expenses remain justified. So this is what it looks like. And the first column is where you list the funding, the extra funding you're receiving. This is available through the Department of Health's OPA website, and they will, along with the amount you're receiving, let you know what purpose you're being funded for, so that you can list it on the appropriate line on the OPWDD 5. Column 2 is where you report your expenses related to that extra funding that you're receiving. And column 3 tells you where you can find that in the CFR 1. Now, you don't have to report the total from CFR 1 if some of that expense is unrelated to what you're receiving this extra property aid for. And you don't need to report anything in column 2 if you're receiving no funding for that purpose as reported in column 1. Some people just go down column 2 and report everything that they've got listed in the CFR 1, and you don't have to do that. One thing to keep in mind is if you have to fill out this schedule if you're reporting any of those programs or program sites on your CFR, even if you're not receiving any funding. And in that case, all you do is on line 1, column 1, put a 0, line 1, column 2, put another 0, and that's fine. You'll be able to validate then. But you have to go in to complete this OPWDD 5 schedule for each of those sites. Column 4, as you see here, just gives you the net difference between columns 1 and 2, and that could be a positive or negative number. If your expenses are greater than the extra funding you're receiving, column 5 is where that amount is. Then there's a drop down and you give an explanation for the difference. If the expense is greater than the extra funding you're receiving, your explanation in column 5 would just be unfunded. If by chance the extra funding you're receiving exceeds the amount that you reported for that purpose in the column 2, the reason could be a different depreciation schedule than what was anticipated or something like that. And there are different possible explanations that you can mark for in column 5. We've retired several program codes for this reporting period, and we've added a few new ones. 0257 is the new ComHab-R, or ComHab Residential program that was created in response to COVID. The series 0500 through 0502 relate to the new CCO billing for MSC. And as we go further here, trying to turn the page, there we go. We've added some new, we deleted one MSC-related funding a job title, and we added 2 new ones. Those apply only for the CCOs who provide that service. Now, as was mentioned before in the general changes, there's when you report units of service in the CFR 1 now, there's a 13A for Medicaid fee-for-service, 13B for Medicaid managed care, and 13C for other units of service. And we're instructing you here that when you report those retainer days and the therapeutic leave days, and we've got these new retainer days too because of the COVID-19, then you report all of those on line 13A. One of the new funding source codes is 531, which has to do with the Empire State Supported Housing Initiatives. We expanded our FAQ in Section 8 regarding how to report your to-from transportation expense for certain programs in order to be able to get your full reimbursement. And we've also modified the program, limiting you, if you're reporting a CFR for OPWDD, you have to have a 12-month CFR that ends on either June 30th or December 31st. And now I'm going to pass you off to the next presenter, Jahida. One second.
Department. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're all set, Gia.
Thank you. The education building is located on 89 Washington Avenue in Albany, the building with all the pillars next to the state capitals, in case you need to visit. On this site, we will go over SED highlights, supplementals, and changes. Rate setting unit website. On the rate setting unit webpage, you will find manuals and forms that have CFR manuals and forms, SED4, RS2 Excel worksheets, a link to the software, reimbursable cost manuals, rules and regulations. Tuition rate setting methodology that describe how a particular year's tuition were calculated, online data, register to access to RSU tuition rate processing application through CETFN, view tuition rate calculation, and access to CETFN help screens. We have also included a link for you to register to receive SED rate setting issues notification by electronic mail of the latest memoranda and other technical assistance documents available on the RSU website. Late submission penalty. For SED provider, the interest expense on working capital loans for late filers of required financial information will be reimbursed on a prorated basis if submitted within 90 days of August 1st for calendar filers. No interest expense will be reimbursed for entities that file cost reports more than 90 days after August 1st. Please note, non-reimbursable interest expense will affect the tuition rate for the tuition rate year 2 years after the report year associated with the required financial report and will apply to all tuition rates for that year, prospective, appeal, reconciliation, and audit. For calendar year filers, an interest penalty due to late submission of the 2020 CFR will be applied to all tuition rates for the 2021-2022 rate year. SED supplemental schedules. There are 2 supplemental schedules specific to SED, SED1, program and enrollment data, and SED4, related services. For calendar year CFR, each SED school age, preschool, and preschool evaluation programs need to be reported in 6-month segments, January to June on one column and July to December in another column. for SED1 schedule, and as well for CFR1, CFR4, and CFR4A. Schedule SED4 is to be completed on fiscal year basis, July to June. SED1 supplement program and enrollment data. This schedule is to be completed by all service providers required tuition rates from SED for school age and preschool programs. The top half of SED1 collects student enrollment by program by full-time equivalent, FTE. Reports total FTEs by funding source on SED1, lines 100 to 107. Report the total days the program operated on SED1, line 109. Number of days in session. For calendar CFR, enter the number of days in a full-time program during January to June in the school year column of the first set of columns. On the second set of columns, enter the number of days in the full-time program during July and August in the summers column, and number of days in full-time programs for September to December in school year columns. For special education itinerant services, also known as SEIT, on SED1, line 111, report billable units, half-an-hour units, on the basis of enrollment as mandated by students' IEPs. Comparing this number to the billable SEIT unit as reported on CFR1, line 13 is a measure of efficiency. The unit of service should be reported in appropriate program. The 9135 to 9139, that's for the individual sessions, 9140 to 9145, if they receive services in group of 2, 9145 to 9149, if they receive services in group of 3 or more students. Report the actual IEP mandated half-an-hour units of service provided for all special education itinerant services on SED1, line 115. Actual SEIT units provided. Please note, actual SEIT unit of service should be reported on per session basis, non-prorated. For example, if we have a half-an-hour group SEIT session with 3 students, that should be reported as 1 unit of service. Calculate care days by multiplying total FTEs by session days. Enrollment is reported as a full-time equivalent. A student is counted as a full-time 1 FTE unless admitted after the start of the school year or discharged before the end of the school year or determined to be illegally absent. FTE is calculated based up on weeks enrolled divided by the number of weeks program is in session. Please refer to section 32 of the CFR manual, page 32A.2. Student FTE is also prorated when child is in program for less than 5 hours. FTE is calculated by number of hours in program divided by 5 hours. Full-day programs are 5 hours of instruction. Care days are used to calculate a per-day tuition rate, which is used in the rate-setting methodology. Care days are established by multiplying the student FTE times the session days in the school year. For example, if we have 25 students times 180 days for school year and 30 days for summer session equal to 5,250 care days. Refer to the CFR manual for examples of student enrollment FTE calculation. When reporting FTE enrollment for 1-to-1 aids, include the FTEs in both 9230 program and the program the child is enrolled in. SED1, lines 201 to 903, detail the number of classroom reported and student FTEs enrolled by program for each SED-approved classroom ratio, and this should agree to the program approval letter in the effect for the CFR year. This is the screenshot of SED schedule from the calendar CFR. The SS column presents it's from January to June, and the SS columns are for July to December. Related services, SED4. SED4 is broken down into 3 sections: capacity, need, productivity. Capacity, the half-hour units the school can provide based on their school hours and staffing allocated to the program. Need, this is based on the mandated requirements for the student's IEP. Productivity, this calculates the percentage of the related services provided to what they are capable of providing. The SED4 is required for all rate-based programs except for SEED programs. SED4 not required if the only special education program a service provider operates is a special education itinerant teacher program or program code 9135. Schedule RS2 does not need to be sent to SED. Please retain a copy of this schedule for your files. An Excel version of the RS2 schedule is available on the rate setting unit website listed here under manuals and forms. This is the screenshot from the CFR for SED4 schedule. RS2 information. Data from the RS2 fits into SED4. Instruction on RS2 may be found on RSU website at the link listed below. Complete a separate RS2 for each related service type. For column 4A from Schedule RS2 and column 6A, total by therapy type, report sessions in half-hour blocks of time. Prorate as needed. For example, if it's 45 minutes, equal to 1.5 sessions, and etc. Please note, RS2 will add new column sessions not provided due to telepractice accessibility issues. SED changes. In Section 8.0, for general instructions of the CFR manual, details were added to the state agency-specific instructions section describing how SEED unit of service, costs, and revenues are to be reported throughout the CFR. Additional details were also added to the frequently asked questions FAQs. In Section 32A for SED1, Program and Enrollment Data of the CFR manual, details were added to number 5 and number 6 of this section as not providing further explanation as to how mandated and provided SEED unit of service should be reported on SED1. Section 33C COVID-19S of the CFR manual and the COVID-19S informational schedule for SED only have been added effective July 1st of 2019. The COVID-19S schedule should be used by providers to report SED-only program net changes in program administration and program site expenses and revenues in the reporting period on program site-specific basis that are specifically related to COVID-19. In Section 41.0 or Appendix H, the following SED programs have had program title, description, and/or unit of service modified. Program 9030 to 9039, that's the school age for residential treatment facility education program. 9135 to 9139, that's preschool, and it SEED services for individual sessions. The following SED program codes were added: 9140 to 9144, preschool for SEED services for group session of 2 students. 9145 to 9149, that's also preschool, and it's SEED services for group sessions of 3 or more students. The following SED program code was deleted. The 9039, which is the 4201, Residential Treatment Facility Education Program. Reporting instruction for personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment, PPE, related to the operation of the program site should be reported on Schedule CFR 1, line 36, non-household supplies. PPE may include but is not limited to mask, face covering, hand sanitizer, and hand soap for students and program staff, gloves, glasses, or any supplies used to minimize the exposure of hazards that may cause injury or illness. Bulk purchases of equipment such as partition or dividers exceeding $5,000 should be depreciated and reported on Schedule CFR 1, line 45, depreciation equipment. Please refer to Appendix O for further guidelines. Please note, CFR 1, line 36, and line 45 are both classified as a direct care in the calculation of the tuition rate and the application of the non-direct care cost screen parameter. Personal protective equipment related to agency administration personnel and or agency administration areas should be reported on Schedule CFR 3, line 17, other. PPE may include it but is not limited to mask, face covering, hand sanitizer, and hand soap for administrative staff, gloves, glasses, and any supplies used to minimize the exposure to hazards that may cause injury or illness. And that includes my section, and I will transfer it to the next presenter, which is Alpha Amin.
Hi, this is Alpha Amin. I work for OPWDD and will cover steps to a successful CFR submission. Perform data entry for all schedules, then validate submission to get a document control number, prepare for upload, connect to the CFRS upload page on the OMH website and individually upload CFR data, financial statements, and certification. Validate submission and assign DCN. From the toolbar, select Utility and then select Validate Submission and assign DCN. Here, click Perform Validation to validate the entire submission. If there are any errors, a message box pops up highlighting and detailing the error in yellow. In most cases, clicking on the error will take the user to the screen containing the error. Correct any errors and repeat the validation process. When there are no errors in the submission, the software will assign a document control number. Reports and printing. Now that a DCN number has been assigned, from the toolbar, select the reports in order to view or print all a specific schedule from your CFR. You have the option to select individual schedules or click Expected to highlight all schedules in the submission type completed. Clicking Send to Printer sends the document to the user's default printer. Make sure it has a legal size paper in it. Clicking Write to File displays the document on the computer screen in Notepad. Inventory lists the program site defined and other identifying information about what is in the submission. This can be useful in diagnosing problems. Advanced allows for printing only selected NYS agencies and or county schedules. Prepare for upload. Where is the current destination for prepare for upload file located? If your CFRS software was installed to the default location, your upload file will be located in the directory dependent on your software version. Or you can use the browse for a new directory if you want to install the file in an alternative local or LAN location. After the upload file has been prepared, a confirmation messenger box pops up. Take note of where you are saving the file by either printing the screen or saving to your desktop, as you will need to locate the file in the later step of the submission process. Click Close to close the messenger box, and then click Go to CFRS Upload page. Uploading a submission. Pop-up window informs you that you are being redirected to the OMH Upload portal page. Click Yes to continue. From the bottom of the screen, select Upload your CFR submission or financial statement. You will also be able to upload the completed budget, certification pages, supplemental attestation schedule, and parent agency administration allocation from this screen. Enter your agency's 5-digit provider agency code and press Next. Choose type of the documents to upload from the drop-down box. Follow the steps as outlined in the software. You will have to go through this process several times as the CFR, financial statements, and certification need to be submitted separately. This is an example of confirmation email. It is recommended that you save a copy of this email. This is to back up the data. From toolbar, select Utility, then select Backup Data. You must close all screens in order to effect changes in the Advanced Panel page. The software will apply the changes to the last file that you were in. Remember to back up your file in 2 or more locations. From the Help menu, there is a guidance to assist in the backing up all CFRS data or backing up of a single submission. Converting CFR 4 detail to CBR 4. The Consolidated Budget Report is a series of schedules created in the CFRS software and used to fulfill fiscal reporting requirements related to the receipt of state aid. When importing master data from a CFR to a CBR or vice versa, there is a second step, which includes using the Convert CFR 4 to CBR 4. After the initial conversion, you will receive the following reminder message regarding the second step. The submission type has changed. CBR 4 position title codes have been imported. However, you will need to use the Convert CBR 4 to CFR 4 screen on the Utility menu to transfer your position title codes to CFR 4. From the Utilities menu, you can change or delete funding source codes. Update and delete agency definition. From the Utilities menu, you can update or delete the agency definition. This screen shows the links for the online help regarding the new CFR. This concludes my section. Here is the next presenter, Ms. Michelle Zelensky.
Good morning. Next, we will be going over the new COVID-19 informational schedule, which is a supplemental schedule on the CFR that was developed to help understand the economic impact of the pandemic on each provider. It is required for all CFRs submitted to OMH, OPWDD, OASAS, DOH, and OCFS. It is independent of the other CFR schedules. Information provided on the COVID-19 schedule does not transfer to any other CFR schedule. Instructions for the COVID-19 schedule are located in Section 33B of the 1920 CFR Manual, and also in the Calendar 2020 Manual. The COVID-19 schedule is completed using the accrual basis of accounting. It is not subject to certification, but should be reviewed for reasonableness. The schedule is used to report increases in program administration and program site expenses and revenues in the reporting period on a program site specific basis that are specifically related to the COVID-19 pandemic. For OPWDD providers only, those expenses and revenues are reported on a program code specific basis. Program site and program administration expenses are directly associated with the provision of services in the program site. Report all expenses incurred and revenues earned for the reporting period on the appropriate lines. If there is no applicable line, report the expense or revenue on the applicable other line. This is a snapshot of the COVID-19 schedule in the CFRS software. There are 3 sections in the new schedule, and they are the general information, program site data, and personal services. First, complete the general information section by answering a series of questions. Question 1A, did your agency receive a loan from the SBA Paycheck Protection Program? Answer, yes or no. If yes, enter the date your agency received the loan on 1C and the amount of the loan on 1B. Question 2A, was the PP loan your agency received forgiven in the current CFR period? Answer, yes or no. If yes, enter the date the PPP loan was forgiven and what the amount of that forgiveness was. And question 3, report the total amount of revenue and gains on the extinguishment of debt recorded on the CFR reporting period that was attributable to COVID-19 funding, grants, loan forgiveness, donations, awards, and or tax credits. Include in question 3 total revenue and gains on the extinguishment of debt, such as COVID-19 grants awarded by private foundations and governmental agencies, the amount of the PP loan that was forgiven and recorded as revenue or a gain on extinguishment of debt, the COVID-19 federal tax credits recorded as revenue, and donations received to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Next, complete the program site data section. Expenses related to dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic that were above and beyond the normal course of business are recorded on this section. They include personal protection equipment, personal services expenses, such as overtime, hazard pay, using staff that are assigned to other programs or reassigned to other programs to deal with the pandemic, temporary housing for COVID-positive residents or exposed staff, increased cleaning services and machines expenses above and beyond the normal course of business, expenses related to telecommuting necessitated because of the COVID-19 pandemic, storage facilities, security measures, and interest on debt incurred to maintain staff, and costs for emergency medical services under FEMA, such as emergency medical care for COVID-19 patients, emergency operations centers, facilities, meals and meal supplies for emergency workers, medical supplies, medical testing and vaccination and training. Next, complete the revenue section. Report only the COVID-19 funding that was recorded as revenue in the CFR reporting period, such as CARES Act loans that have been forgiven and recorded as revenue or as a gain on the extinguishment of debt, and program rate changes related to COVID-19, such as enhanced rates, retainer day billings, flexible billings that would not normally qualify as a service. COVID-19 grants awarded by governmental agencies, such as FEMA and the FCC, and or private or public foundations. Donations received to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, and COVID-19 federal tax credits that are recorded as revenue. On line 64, federal grants, there are a number of predefined entries that have been added that can be used to report various sources of COVID-19 funding, including the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Paycheck Protection Program, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Emergency Advance, Federal Emergency Management Agency, the FCC, and COVID-19 federal tax credits. Next, complete the personal services section of the COVID-19 schedule. Report only the personal services expenses that were incurred by your agency in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. Enter the personal services data in the same manner as the program site-specific section of Schedule CFR 4. For each position title code that is added to a program site, the standard work week is selected and the hours paid and amount paid are entered. The total personal services expense for each program site transfers to line 1 of the program site data section of the COVID-19 schedule. For more information, refer to the instructions for the program site section of Schedule CFR 4 located in Section 16.0 of the CFR manual. And here is your next presenter.
Welcome back. This is Jahida Benantar again from SED. In this section, we will cover COVID-19 as informational schedule. The COVID-19 as is required for all CFR submissions from SED providers and is completed independent from the other CFR schedules and the COVID-19 schedule. The COVID-19 as schedule is used to report the net changes in program administration and program site expenses and revenues in the reporting period on program site-specific basis that are specifically related to COVID-19. The information reported on this schedule should be the net changes in expenses and revenues determined by the provider to be related to COVID-19. For additional information on how to complete COVID-19 as schedule, please refer to the instruction in Section 33C, page 33C.3 of the 1920 CFR manual. The COVID-19 as schedule will not be subjected to certification, but should be reviewed for reasonableness. This is the screenshot of the COVID-19 as schedule, and you should complete the following question in the general information section of the COVID-19 as schedule. The step and the requirement to file the COVID-19 as schedule is similar to the COVID-19 as schedule that is just mentioned by Michelle from OMH. COVID-19 as expenses. For personal services, program site and program administration, The Personal Services section of the COVID-19 as schedule is completed in the same manner as the Program Site-specific section of the Schedule CFR 4. For each position title code that is added to Program Site, the standard work week is selected and the hours paid and the amount paid are entered. The total personal services expenses for each program site transfer to line 1 on the Program Site Data section of the COVID-19 as schedule. For additional information on how to complete the Personal Services section of the COVID-19 as schedule, please refer to the instruction for Schedule CFR 4, which are located in Section 16.0 of the CFR Manual. And this is a screenshot of an Excel worksheet for the COVID-19 as Personal Services. Contracted Direct Care and Clinical Personal Services. The Contracted Direct Care and Clinical Personal Services section of the COVID-19 as schedule is completed in the same manner as the Program Site-specific section of Schedule CFR 4A. For each position title code that is added to the program site, the hours paid and the amount paid are entered. The total personal services expenses for each program site transfer to line 20 of the Program Site Data section of the COVID-19 as schedule. For additional information on how to complete the Contracted Direct Care and Clinical Personal Services section of the COVID-19 as schedule, please refer to the instructions for the Schedule CFR 4A, which are located in Section 17.0 of the CFR Manual. And again, this is the screenshot of the Excel worksheet for COVID-19 as Contracted Direct Care and Clinical Personal Services. The additional expenses reported on this schedule should be the net change in expenses determined by the provider to be related to COVID-19. We have included a couple of examples. For example, if food costs were down because children were remote learning, line 6 of the net change in costs incurred by the program site in providing meals and or snack to the program site participant would reflect a negative amount. If supplies and materials for non-house increase because the provider bought additional PPE, line 21 on COVID-19 as would reflect an amount of PPE cost only. Please make sure you are reporting the appropriate expenses on COVID-19 as schedule. If you are a multi-funded agency, you will need to report the SED data separate from the other agencies you are reporting to. And if you have any additional questions, please contact your assigned SED rate setting accountant. The following are the expenses categories for COVID-19 as, and it's line 1 to 52. COVID-19 as revenues. Report in revenue section of the COVID-19 as schedule only the net change in revenue and gains on the extinguishment of debt recorded in the period that were related to COVID-19. For the following line items of revenue, only report the revenues received after netting out any negotiated contractual adjustment for line 53, participant fees, and for line 59, other third parties. For example, if an agency X, Y, and Z has a published fees of $105, a visit for the provision of medically supervised outpatient, XYZ has contractually agreed to pay $75 per visit for patient covered by Health Life or health insurance company. For every billable visit by a person covered by Health Life, X, Y, and Z will report $75 in revenue, not the $105, with a $30 adjustment to revenue that should be reported on COVID-19 as scheduled. And this is the screenshot of the lines for revenues, line 53 to 70. And that includes my section. Thank you very much for attending, and I will pass it to the next presenter, Paul Green.
Hi, this is Paul Green from OASAS. So the remainder of the presentation is directed toward agencies that submit a claiming document, DMH2 and DMH3. If your agency does not, then you may leave at this time. So again, agencies that file a claiming document include those receiving state aid or local aid in the form of net deficit funding. Agencies that do not file a claiming document include well, first of all, SED, DOH, and OCFS providers, so they do not file a claiming, and OASAS, OMH, OPWDD providers that do not receive any state aid for any programs. Okay? So again, we're going to talk about the DMH2, DMH3. If you are unsure whether you have a claiming or not, then just stay with us. It's only going to be another 10, 15 minutes. Okay. To begin, budget modifications. If you haven't already done so, compare your projected expenses and revenues to your approved budget now. If it appears a modification to your approved budget is required, consult the funding New York State agency for guidance. It's always better to address it sooner than later. You've already done the core reports. You've done a good job. You're at the DMH1, and down in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a button that says Transfer to DMH2. Click on that, and it will show you the 5 programs that you operate. Okay? You can then select one, all, or several of the programs. You can select them to send them to a claim for a specific county. Now, in this case, I have every other one selected, and it's going to New York County, so it'd be a New York City provider, and 100% of the expenses and the revenue would go to that county. Okay. If I wanted to send that through and then come back and then select the 2 remaining ones and send them to a different county, I can do that. So you can send to different counties because each county is only interested in the programs that they operate. Now, also, I had a provider recently said he has a program that he reports for 2 different counties. So I said, well, fine, select the county, then select the percentage of it for that county, so 60% for one, and send it over, and then come back and select the same program again for the different county for 40% and send that over. So now it's one program being operated, being reported for 2 counties. And then, if those numbers aren't exact, you can still go into the DMH2 and make adjustments to the numbers. But at least it gives you a starting point. Okay? So once you've transferred the numbers, you will get this stating there's already information on the DMH2. Do you want to override it? And the answer is yes. You're just going to replace it. And then you would say yes, and then it'd say it's successfully transferred. However, you will need to edit those lines on a DMH2 and add the detailed data, which means the total's transferred, but the drop-down box, the detailed boxes, did not transfer. Okay? So, for instance, this is line 17A, Medicaid fee-for-service, and there's a little asterisk next to the 17A, so you know it's a drop-down box. It's also gray, so that helps you to know that too. And the total would have transferred. 449 would be here, but this drop-down box, you would have to go in and select base Medicaid and put in the 449 in order for the detailed box to match the total reporting. Okay. DMH2 is once it's transferred over, the first few things you have to do is you have to select the state agency, the county, the program, okay? And then you select the contract type, direct or local, okay? Direct contract is monies received directly from the state of New York, or local would be monies received through a local county or New York City. Direct contract usually starts with a state contract number of C0 something, okay? Local contract can be anything. It can be Niagara, it can be NIA 123. So, but direct contract usually starts with a C0. It's important to get this right. Some of our software, if you electronically upload a CFR and it's looking for a C0 number and you selected local, it may get rejected. So anyways, just keep that in mind. Direct contract, C0, local contract would be something, can be almost anything. Okay. You also have to select the accounting method. You used accrual accounting on the core because that's what you were required. But on a claim, you can use accrual, modified accrual, or cash. Okay. There's 5 tabs here. There's the expenses, the revenues, the adjustments to revenues, deficit funding, and expense variance. So then this is the expenses. And you've got your personal services, vacation leave accruals did not transfer over because they are non-reimbursable expense. Your fringe benefits, your OTPS, and your equipment. And again, there's a drop-down box for OASAS providers that can go in and make adjustments there. And adjustments, there's a drop-down box and such. Now, if any of these numbers are not what you want on your claim, you can go in and change it because this is a white line, so you can go in and change it. But you're going to have to explain here in the 5th tab, the expense variance, you're going to have to explain why the number changed. Okay? So that was the expenses. This is the revenues. The revenues are all these different categories. You got participant fees, you got Medicaid, managed fee, fee for service and managed care. Then you got other third party. You got state grants. State grants are New York State revenues received for state agencies other than our 6 agencies. Okay. So if it's the social services or something, some other NCON or something like that, but it's not our 6 agencies. Okay. Also, the federal grants there, that's where you'd be reporting PPP money and such. But here's the big one: is line 28, net deficit funding. Surprisingly, a lot of people miss that. So you do have to report the amount of net deficit funding that you receive from both the state and the local government funding. Okay. Line 29 is other. Total gross revenues is $842,000, which exceeds your total expenses. Your total expenses were $776,000, and your total revenue was $842,000. Okay. Net deficit funding is the last dollar in, so some of that $174,000 will be taken back. Okay, because you didn't spend it all. So let's go to the 3rd tab, is the adjustments to revenue. And these are adjustments that can be made if necessary. Refer back to the CFR manual. Usually these are not adjustments that are being made, but if you feel that you have one, go back to the CFR manual and double check. Okay. But what it does do here is it establishes the net operating cost. Net operating cost, line 43, is very important. Basically, net operating cost is your total expenses less all your revenues received except for your state aid, your net deficit funding. So your total expenses less all revenues besides your net deficit funding equals net operating cost, which is $108,000. We go to the next slide, and now it asks you to complete the deficit funding. there's two ways to do this. OASAS, well, first of all, you're going to put in your state share here on line 44. Line 45 is equal to your county tax dollars. Line 46 is provider's voluntary contribution. 47 is a calculation. And 48 is non-funded. For OMH surplus or deficit of funding over expenses, and for OPWDD, all other funding not limited in lines 44, not listed in lines 44 through 47. Okay, so for OASAS, you're going to report the lower of your state contract amount, which was $174,000, or the net operating cost, which is $108,000. So that's all you're going to have to put there. And line 49, 108, needs to equal line 43 from the tab before it, 108. So that's that. Now, if OMH's instance, if they had a lower number here, 100,000, then in order to make it equal to 108, you're going to use this line 48 to report OMH's surplus or deficit of funding over expenses. Okay. Finally, you have the fifth tab, the expense variance tab. Expense variance tab is just an explanation of the difference between the core reports, the DMH1 and the DMH2. Okay? So again, there are no changes here, so there's nothing to explain. But anything that there is a difference, you have to put in an explanation. A quick explanation, not a long paragraph. Adjustment for vacation leave accrual, which is non-reimbursable. Adjustment for equipment depreciation that was adjusted out. Adjustment for a percentage of agency admin. Okay. So the DMH2 is important. The DMH2 is used, as I said yesterday, it's used for different purposes than the core reports are. Okay, so on the core reports, we want all the programs under each in its own column per site. Okay, however, when it comes time to come to the county, sometimes the county or the claims department want you to do things a little differently than we want you to do them on the core. The software enables you to do that. So yesterday I told you you could use the index code to collapse sites into a program. Well, this is an example of expanding and adding another column. Okay? So if for some reason the county ever says to you on your claim, we want you to split that site in half or take some of that out and put it into its own column, this is how you do it. Okay? If they never say it, then you never do it. But just so you know, it's called Define a DMH-only program. Click on this. And then it says, please select the program. So your normal program is your 2050-00, but so you select that, but then they want you to enter an index code, 04, and then you hit Save, and it basically creates another column on your claim, and it's the 2050-04. So now you can put $50,000 of OTPS in this column. You just have to remember to go back to the 2050-00 and remove $50,000 from there, because the two columns should still add up to the total amount. Okay? So again, you may never use this. However, if somebody ever says to you at the county, we want it reported this way, and you say, yeah, but they don't want it that way, well, just so you understand, in the software, there are ways to accommodate us both. Okay. So, in summary, DMH2 is completed on a New York State agency and county-specific basis. The method of accounting must be indicated over each column, containing fiscal data, and can be reported on a full accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis of accounting. This is a simple thing, but don't forget to do it. I asked a gentleman recently why all the numbers change. He says, because it's cash basis. I go, you got to tell me that. So you have to tell us that. okay? Direct or local contract type must be selected, and a contract number must be entered for each reported program. Direct contracts generally start with C0. If there is no local contract number, you can enter the first 7 letters of the county name. Agency administration is distributed between New York State agencies using the ratio value allocation methodology. Within OASAS and OPWDD schedules, the software calculated ratio value must be used. Okay, so we still want you to use the amount of agency admin that was determined in the core reports in reporting the claim. Okay. Equipment may be expensed rather than depreciated. So if you purchase a big piece of equipment, you're going to expense it, but you're going to have to remember to remove the depreciation that flowed over from the core report. Okay. Equipment costing $5,000 or more per unit and having useful more years must be reported on line 9, and revenue detail must be provided on the other lines. Okay. Medicaid, federal grants, and state grants, these are all drop-down boxes, and you have to remember that the total transferred, but the detail did not. So you're going to have to, if you hit save, it'll come up with a validation warning that you have to go in and complete these detailed boxes. Okay. So you've done a good job. You've uploaded the CFR. You feel pretty good, and the review unit calls you and says, you got to make a change back on your core report on your CFR 1, okay? You have to change a number. So you go in, you make the change, and you're about to upload it again, but now you got to remember, any changes made to the core have to be then transferred back over to the claim again, okay? The claim does not automatically update when you make a change to the core, all right? So if you go back upon review and you make any changes, you got to remember to make those adjustments on the claim also. So that's a DMH2. Next is the DMH3. The DMH3 is all about telling us the funding source for the money we gave you. I know it's a little roundabout, but nonetheless, it is important. OASAS only has like 5 or 6 funding source codes. OMH, I believe, has quite a few, and OPWDD have quite a few. Basically, you would go into the DMH3. There's going to be one DMH3 for every DMH2. Okay, so each program will have its own. You'll pick the state agency. Over to the right, you'll pick the county and the program. Okay, you'll pick the funding source code there. Below that, you'll have the direct contract or the local contract, and down at the bottom, you'll have the state contract number, okay? And you're going to complete this section in the middle here, okay? So first of all, when you save from the DMH2, this should be established for you, and the direct contract or local contract that you selected on the DMH2, that should transfer over, and the contract number should transfer over, but you'll have to double check them to make sure that they did. Okay, these you're all going to fill in: units per service, total expenses, less applied net revenue. That would be, again, all the revenue received besides net deficit funding. Okay, so that's all the revenue except for net deficit funding. That brings down a net operating cost. Over to the right is a running total for this program, for the funding source codes for this program. Since there's only one funding source code for this program, it's the same numbers over to the right. Okay, so you've completed this all. You feel pretty good. You hit save, and then you say, "Ah, dear, wrong funding source code. The funding source code changed this year." Okay. So if you go into that middle section and change it there, then you'll have 2 funding source codes for this program, and you won't be able to pass validation. Okay, So instead, look to the bottom left, big button, Change Funding Source. Click on that. Then it says Current Funding Source is 013S. Please select a new funding source, 013F. Hit Complete Update, and you're done. Okay. So if you need to change a funding source, try to remember to use a change funding source. If you don't and you screw it up and you get two of them, then what you do is you go to Utilities and you go to Delete Funding Source, and you go and you will delete the one that you don't want. Okay, but it's just easier to use the change funding. All right, you can also do the same thing for the county. If you don't like the county name, then you can select the Change County and then select a new county and complete the update. Okay. So this is an example where there's two funding source codes for one program. It's 072B, and the expenses are $485,000. And over to the right, you see that the running total is $972,000. Okay, so basically, there's another funding source code 073B with an additional $487,000, which adds up to the $972. Okay, so you can have more than one funding source code for a program. In summary, for OASAS and OMH, the contract number and type indicated for each program DMH2 will be transferred to the DMH3. For OPWDD, at least one contract number and type combination indicated for each program on DMH3 must match the information indicated for the program on DMH2. DMH3 is completed on a New York State agency and county-specific basis. Funding source codes are found in Appendix N of the CFR manual. Contract numbers must be entered. Contract type must be designated. For each funding source center, persons served per year, units of service, total adjusted expenses, applied net revenue, again, that's all the revenue except for your state aid, and then net operating costs. And then this is where the lines cross to. So there was just one thing I failed to mention. So who has to complete, what programs need to be reported on the claim, okay? So for OPWDD, only your programs that receive state aid funding need to be reported on the claim, okay? So if you have 10 programs, but only one of them is state aid funded, that's the only one you have to report on the DMH2 and DMH3, okay? For OMH, if you all the programs that you operate have to be reported on the state aid claim. Okay, so all the programs operated need to be reported on the state aid claim. For OASAS, and we're just kind of making this change now, if you have any programs that are state aid funded, they all have to be reported on the claim. But if you do not have any, then none have to be on the claim. Okay, so if all you have are rate-based programs, then you do not need to complete a claim. Okay, but if you have 9 programs and one of them is state aid funded, then all 9 of them have to be reported on the claim. Okay. So that's the end of the claiming section. Again, we're here for your assistance if need be. On that note, I'm going to pass the mic back to the host.
Thank you, Paul. That concludes our second session for the CFR 2020 calendar year. We appreciate you guys joining. We had a good attendance. In case you missed the beginning too, please take time to fill out the post-event survey so that we could make these trainings better for you guys. We definitely would appreciate it. Once again, the recordings will be available. We'll send out an email to all the providers to make sure that they have access to the recording along with the questions as you guys are asking. We're going to take our time and develop answers together to give you guys the best answers to all your questions, and we'll also post that online, and we'll provide you with a link to that so everyone can have access. Once again, thank you, and we appreciate you guys attending.